Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. All right. Yeah. Here we go.
Moments of renewal. In the year 909, Duke William III of Aquitaine founded a monastery at Cluny. We read that how it was that he took like a former hunting lodge on one of his properties, turned it into a monastery, and it became known for its strict observance of Benedict's rule. It became known as the Cluniac Reforms. So it began at Cluny. Other communities sprang up that were described by Dr. Gonzalez as second Clunies. Right? So there's this network of these Cluniac monasteries that are now part of this larger reform. After reforming monasteries, the Cluniacs set out to reform the entire church. Whoa. For them, the pillars on which they founded themselves were poverty, celibacy, obedience. Have we heard those before? I mean, essentially, later mendicant orders are going to be based on those values. Robert of Molesme founded a monastery at Citeaux, which in Latin was called the Cistercian. The Cistercian then would be the center of what later would become the Cistercian movement, another monastic movement in the church. In 1139, the Second Lateran Council would determine that popes would be elected by cardinals. Can you imagine that mess that we were just talking about of all these families fighting over who's going to be the next pope, and different emperors naming popes and different kings naming popes? No, let's just find a way to get over this. What conclusion do we come to in 1139? Who would decide who the pope is? The cardinals of the church. Who decides today who will be the pope, the bishop of Rome? The cardinals of the church. Where does that trace itself to? To 1139, the Second Lateran Council. Gregory VII is an important figure in the history of the church. His name before he became pope was Hildebrand, so often referred to him as Hildebrand. Hildebrand was a monk. All of these monk popes, right? When monk popes become pope, they often bring with them their monkishness. Hildebrand was pope from 1073 to 1085, and in many ways was a reformer in that era. He dreamed of uniting the world under the papacy. Let's bring all of the world together, and who will be the ruler of the world? I will. The Pope. Right? That was his dream of uniting the world under the papacy. He forbade vernacular translations of the Bible. The Bible would only be in Latin. Why would you forbid people to read it in Spanish or French or British? Wait a minute. That's letting these translations get out of control here, right? We're going to have control of the texts of our church. He organized a military offensive against Islam. How interesting. He convened a synod condemning simony and demanding clerical celibacy. So by the 11th century, celibacy is mandated in the church. Celibacy, one of the issues over which we divided with the Eastern Church, with the Patriarch of Constantinople, will now be mandated in the Western Church up to the present day in the Roman Church. Emperor Henry IV believed that the emperor should appoint supportive bishops. Right? If you're the emperor, you want to make sure that bishops, who can be influential people, are people that you want in those positions. You want other people appointing the bishops that you have to live with? No, you want to make sure that you can appoint the bishops who are going to be supportive of you and of your kingdom. So he believed the emperor should appoint supportive bishops. He convened a council to depose Gregory VII, whom he called not a pope, but a false monk. And the charges that he brought him up on were charges of tyranny, adultery, and practice of magic. So, this is going to become serious now. The emperor is accusing the pope of some pretty big things. What's the pope got to do? The pope responds by placing Henry under interdict, meaning he cannot enter any church. He forbids him to rule in Italy and Germany, saying, wait a minute, you don't rule Italy and Germany. I rule these lands. He frees people from their oaths to Henry, meaning you need not be loyal to the emperor, you need to be loyal to me. And he forbade obedience to Henry as king. Do you see the power struggle that has just developed here? Gregory VII has set himself up against Emperor Henry IV. Who's going to win? Henry enters Rome and seats a rival pope, Clement III, Remember, Clement II was also a rival pope that was seated. How interesting that Henry comes into Rome and seats his own pope. As a side note, Henry's son Conrad would later rebel against him. And Conrad was supported by the church in his rebellion against his father. Why? Because Conrad said, if I become king, if you help me overthrow my father, and I become king, then you can appoint your own bishops. I don't want to appoint, I don't have to appoint your bishops. If I become king, you help me to overthrow my father, I'll let you appoint your own bishops. See the conniving that was going on? 2 popes later, Urban II proclaimed the First Crusade, which we're going to come to in just a moment. Pope Paschal declared all previous lay investitures valid, but threatened excommunication for anyone who attempted lay investiture in the future. It's important for us to understand what lay investiture is. Lay, who is a lay person? A lay person is anyone who is not clergy. So the distinction is between clergy, those who are ordained, and lay, the laity. Interesting. What we saw on Saturday was one person in our community, Angelita, went from being a lay person to becoming a member of the clergy. Interesting. That's what happens in the diaconate ordination. So lay investiture, it's all about who determines, who picks, who appoints, and consecrates bishops. Should lay people like the emperor or the king or the queen decide who the bishop's going to be? Or should the clergy decide that? How are we going to settle the matter? Because we heard how it is that various persons before them were taking it, making it their prerogative. I'm going to name the bishops. That way I know that the bishops are going to be good to me. They're going to support me. I'll name the bishops. I'm good to them. They'll be good to me. So what we're going to see here is that Pope Paschal is going to say, okay, anyone who's a bishop now who is named by a lay person, by a king or an emperor, can still be a bishop. But from now on, anyone who is a lay person who tries to name a person bishop will be excommunicated. Throwing down the gauntlet, says Dr. Gonzalez. I mean, he was really throwing down the gauntlet saying, okay, anyone else dares to try to consecrate another bishop? If you're a king or a queen or an emperor and you try to name another bishop, you will be excommunicated. You're going to hell. You willing to take that risk? Henry agreed to give up his right of investiture of bishops in return for the church giving up feudal privileges and limiting itself to St. Peter's patrimony in Rome. Ooh, think about the move if this happened now, right? Henry said, okay, I won't name bishops so long as you give up all of the land that you have, the feudal territories that you've developed. All that belongs now to the empire, except I'll let you have Rome. What do we have today? Rome belongs to the Vatican is the sovereign state of the Roman Catholic Church. A remnant of this time. St. Peter's patrimony in Rome was given, all else was taken by Henry.